So here we are in the third last class of part one. I hope everybody had a wonderful Nowruz. You're all refreshed, ready to go on 181. So tonight we're going to talk about Rumi and Baha'u'llah. Jalaluddin Muhammad ibn Muhammad al-Balkhi Rumi is widely considered to be the greatest mystical poet ever born in Persia. The man known in the East as Maulana was born in 1207 in the city of Vashk in modern-day Tajikistan, about 150 miles northeast of Balkh in present-day Afghanistan. So let me show you where that is. So this little red thing here is to indicate where Vashk is. It's on a little river. And Balkh is way down here. And I believe if we could scroll around, I think Kabul is just below here. So just to give you an idea of where we're talking about. So there are a number of variations of Rumi's title that you may encounter in your reading. The phrase our master is Maulana in Persian, Maulana in Arabic, and Mevlana in Turkish. So I have those on a handout I gave you tonight, a couple of days ago. When people refer to him as my master, these titles become Maulavi, Malavi, and Mevlavi. The I at the end indicates it's my. In the West, of course, he's known primarily as Jalaluddin Rumi or just Rumi. For the purposes of this course, I will refer to him as Jalaluddin during the first 24 years of his life. At that point, when his father died, he was residing in Turkey. I will call him Rumi thereafter. This is a toponym, a noun which derives from a place name. It signifies the fact that Rumi spent most of his adult life in Anatolia, now called Turkey. If you're curious to know what Rumi called himself, in the preface of his monumental Masnawi, he describes himself as this meek servant dependent upon the mercy of the Almighty God, Muhammad, the son of Muhammad, the son of Hussein al-Balkhi. Now, in 1212, when Jalaluddin was 5 years old, the Valid family moved to Balkh in Afghanistan, which I showed you on that. Well, I'll just bring it back up here. So they moved all the way over here. That's quite a distance. A year or so later, they moved to Samarkand in modern-day Uzbekistan. Somewhere around 1216, they left the region for good. This was some 4 or 5 years before the Mongol invasion of this area began in 1221. The family moved to Baghdad, close to Kufa in central Iraq, and then to Mecca in Arabia, where they performed the pilgrimage. From there, they traveled northwest to Damascus in Syria, before settling in Malatya in southeastern Turkey in 1217. At that point, Jalaluddin was 10 years old. So let's look at Turkey. Okay, so this is Caesarea here. This is Konya here, where he's going to end up in a little while. But first he ended up in, what did I say? Malatya. Where did I find that? Oh my goodness. Oh yeah, here it is, right in the center. Okay. In 1218, Rumi's father, Baha'u'llah Valad, who'd made his living as a Sunni preacher and a teacher of the Hanafi sect of jurisprudence, persuaded the princess who ruled this town up here, Erzincan, I guess it's called, in eastern Turkey, to build him a Sufi khanaqah or lodge in the nearby town. And that was in over here. Now, how he got her to do that, I'm not sure, but Okay, so they're moving around quite a bit. So they settled there and for about 4 years, and he taught general law for that period of time. Baha'u'llah then moved his family to Larend in southern Turkey. Where did I find it? And that is known now as modern day Karaman. So he got another teaching position at this point. So in this town, his son Jalaluddin, now age 17, married a woman or a girl by the name of Gawar Khatun, by whom subsequently he had two sons, Sultan Valad and Alauddin. The Seljuk prince then invited Baha'u'llah to come to the city of Konya. Okay, and this is a large city and very prominent even today. The family settled there in 1229 as Baha'u'llah took up his duties as a professor in the local madrasa. He quickly became known as one of the chief learned men in the city, being given the title the Sultan of the Men of Knowledge. So now that we followed Jalaluddin until he became a married man in Konya, I'm going to set aside the rest of his biography. There isn't sufficient time to follow the intricacies of Rumi's life through its many ups and downs. So for the last 24 years in our century, the foremost scholarly work on Rumi has been Rumi, Past and Present, East and West. It was published in 2000 by the Baha'i scholar Franklin Lewis, who was formerly an associate professor of Persian language and literature and chair of the Department of Near Eastern Studies and Languages at the University of Chicago. Unfortunately, he died prematurely in June 2019. In this nearly 700-page book, which has been described more than once as magisterial, Lewis tells us that Rumi mania has been alive and well since the 1980s. Not only has Rumi been on the top of best-selling poets for several years, but UNESCO also commemorated his 800th birthday by designating the year 2007 as the Year of Rumi. Despite Rumi's widespread popularity in the West, his influence here will never rival his standing in the Middle East and India. So now we have some readings, and I need some volunteers again. Linda's going to read first. Okay.
Reading number 1. Although over the past 700 years, Rumi's popularity has waxed rather than waned, with appreciation of Rumi's literary and spiritual legacy flourishing for centuries in Central Asia, Iran, India, Anatolia, and many other lands dominated by Persianate culture, the study, translation, and interpretation of his oeuvre has only recently enjoyed a comparable welcome from a Western audience. In the Near East and the Indian subcontinent, Turkey, India, Pakistan, much of India, the study of his poetry flourishes today, with novels, plays, films, scholarly monographs being written, conferences on an annual basis devoted to his memory convened, and universities and institutes of higher education named after him. New editions and selections from his poetry, whether in translation or the original Persian, yearly appear in print. Specialist journals devoted to Rumi have been launched in Persian and Turkish over the past decade in Iran and Turkey, respectively.
Thank you. So consider the situation in the Islamic Republic of Iran, where Rumi has reached new heights of fame among its Persian-speaking people. Okay, Milton, this is a shorter one, number 2.
New commentaries, studies, and editions of his poetry, but especially recitations and musical performances of his poetry, have captured the imagination of intellectuals and the general public in Iran. Not just for scholars and literature lovers, Rumi is championed by proponents of civil society as a precedent for and an exemplar of a more expansive and tolerant Islam.
Okay, that's a very good point. One of the reasons for his long-lasting fame was the extraordinary extent of his creative output. Okay, David Oak, that is number 3.
Yeah, here we go. Judged by modern standards, the Mathnawi is a very long poem. It contains almost as many verses as the Iliad and the Odyssey together, and about twice as many as the Divina Commedia, I guess Divine Comedy. And these comparisons make it appear shorter than it actually is, since every verse of the Mathnawi has 22 syllables, whereas the hexameter may vary from 13 to 17, and the terza rima, like the Spenserian stanza, admits only 10 or 11 in each verse. So that the Mathnawi, with 25,700 verses, is in reality a far more extensive work than the Fairy Queen with 33,500. On the other hand, it is easily surpassed in length by several Persian poems, and that's the Mathnawi of Jalaluddin Rumi, Volume 2.
Okay, thank you. So given the length of Rumi's most famous work, the Mathnavi, and that of his Diwan, which includes an additional 40,000 couplets, this evening's class could easily be extended to a year or more to do full justice to his prodigious output. So let's talk about translations of Rumi for a minute. Most Westerners have come to know Rumi through the translations and recitals of Coleman Barks. However, these are only loosely related to the work of the master poet. Although he regards Rumi as a great spiritual teacher who can see what each soul needs at any particular moment, Barks' chief interest is in number 4. Rob, you could sort of continue that sentence.
To teleport the poems of Rumi out of their cultural and Islamic context into the inspirational discourse of non-parochial spirituality, all of which makes for a Rumi who shares the social assumptions of a modern American audience. For example, in his rendition of the chickpea story from the Masnavi, Barks introduces a sexual twist, and in another poem speaks of sexual love, where the concept is wholly alien to the original. These wrinkles, presumably, aim to make Rumi more palatable to us, but tend instead to distort the poet and the person. Nevertheless, at his best, Barks provides accessible contemporary versions filtered through the lens of a new age, and particularly American idiom, of a wide selection from the poetic corpus Rumi left behind.
By the way, at the beginning or near the beginning, there was this term parochial. And so it's an adjective meaning of or relating to a church parish or showing interest in a limited area only or being narrow. Therefore, the term non-parochial means wide-ranging, broad, or universal. I raise this issue to alert you to the wide-ranging quality of translations of Sufi documents currently available in the marketplace. Many prominently displayed translations are only of marginal usefulness to those interested in discovering what Sufis such as Rumi actually wrote and believed. Many popular renditions of Rumi's poetry have undermined Rumi's message by catering too eagerly to modern sensibilities. Okay, so number 5 goes to Jennifer. Welcome back, by the way.
Thank you. In the worst cases, surprisingly egregious misrepresentations have been enthusiastically welcomed by Western readers. If Shakespeare's works had suffered a similar fate in translation, English speakers would more easily understand the annoyance of many Persian speakers that feel about Rumi's unwelcome role as a prophet of the New Age. Most of the free translations and renditions of Rumi's poetry are colored by sentimentality and a secular humanistic ethos unknown to Rumi. Robert Darr, Review of the Quatrains of Rumi.
Thank you. So to conclude this section, here are the thoughts of Ranald Allen Nicholson regarding his own masterful translation efforts, which he undertook at the suggestion and initially under the supervision of his Cambridge University mentor, Edward Granville Brown, who all Baha'is know about. To put his comments in perspective, Frank Lewis states that R.A. Nicholson must be regarded, along with Badi al-Zaman Firuzanfar, as the greatest scholar of Rumi in that century. Okay, so number 6 is Hangame.
The present translation is intended primarily as an aid to students of Persian. It is therefore as exact and faithful as I can make it, but it does not attempt to convey the inner as distinguished from the outer meaning. That is to say, it gives the literal sense of the words translated without explaining either their metaphorical or their mystical sense. While these latter senses have sometimes been indicated by words in brackets, I have on the whole adhered to the principle that translation is one thing, interpretation another, just as the most fertile source of misinterpretation is inability or neglect to translate correctly.
Well, why don't you finish off with number 7? This is a continuation of that same one.
The Masnavi, it has been said, is easier than easy to the ignorant, but harder than hard on the wise. And I confess that for me there are still many difficulties, which may perhaps be removed by further study of the poet itself, of works historically connected with it, and of relevant Persian and Arabic literature.
Okay, thank you. So that's from one of the best translators of Rumi. But the person I've chosen to quote is somebody else. His name is Javed Mojaddedi. That's what he looks like. He was born in Kabul, Afghanistan, and has been teaching at Rutgers University since 2003. He now serves as the chair of the Department of Religion and director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies. Mojaddedi has published the first 5 books of the Mathnawi through Oxford University Press. Volume 6 is due later this year. And I brought a couple of them with me just to show you. They're small and they're not that expensive, whereas Nicholson's are almost impossible to buy now. So if anybody's really interested in digging into this fantastic poem, these are the ones to start with. Well, to focus on, I guess. So, all that's introduction to our topic, which is the story of Layla and Majnun. From Rumi's vast ocean of writings, I have selected his retelling of the famous story of the ill-fated lovers Layla and Majnun to represent events occurring in the imaginal realm. The closest Western equivalent in terms of its renown and societal influence in the East might be Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet. So Rumi does not name the person involved in his story of the lover and the night patrol. However, based on its contents, Muslims have concluded that the lover is no doubt Majnun, which means crazy. Rumi's version of the tale is lengthy and includes 2 digressions which I have left out. So what I'm going to ask us to do is to just read parts of the story here as a group, and then we'll talk about each of them as we go. So, Alan, I see you're up for this. Thank you very much. So this heading is actually in this italicized heading is in the book itself. So that's not an add-on.
Okay. It's a description, I suppose, of what follows.
Correct.
Story about being in love, lengthy separation, and substantial trial. A young man was love crazed due to a woman, but stayed deprived of the good fate of union. Love gave him so much torture while apart. Why does love act with spite right from the start? Why does love shed blood so relentlessly? To make outsiders to love, truths all flee. Rumi.
Well, you're doing a great job. I'm going to ask you to read the next, which is a straight continuation. Number 9.
When he dispatched to her a messenger, that man, through envy, would try stealing her. And what was written by his secretary on his behalf was read out differently. If he made wind his messenger to trust, that would have become polluted by the dust. If he sewed on a bird's wing his love note, it would get burned by heat from that which he wrote. God's jealous guarding blocked paths to solution and snapped the flags of troops of his cognition.
Thank you so much. So the story of Layla and Majnun is perhaps the most popular love story in the Middle East, Muslim Eastern world. Majnun's unlucky love for Layla, a girl of a rival and enemy tribe, is the theme of Arabic tales which have been handed down for centuries in all Muslim countries. Layla is the Arabic term meaning of the night, while Layli is the Persian equivalent. Majnun was originally believed to have been a man named Qays, Q-A-Y-S, who belonged to the Amir tribe of Arabs. Through his love for Layla, which he could not fulfill due to tribal rivalry, he gradually became a crazy man, a Majnun. This Arabic word literally means possessed by the jinn. Okay, is that Bill or Sherry? I can't see who's behind that hand. Number 10.
In Sufi language, Majnun, means driven by spiritual yearning to the point of being crazed with love for the beloved. This craziness of being an ecstatic mystic lover of God is quite different from the craziness of being psychotic or mentally ill.
Okay, hang on there, Bill. I'd like you to read the next one in a second. So in his introduction to Sufism, Titus Burckhardt gives 2 reasons, among others, for the frequent use of the language of love in Sufism. Okay, Bill, let's try number 11 too.
On the one hand, it makes it possible to enunciate the most profoundly esoteric truths without coming into conflict with dogmatic theology. On the other, the intoxication of love symbolically corresponds to states of knowledge which go beyond discursive thought. It is therefore fit to describe inner experiences that would otherwise be ineffable.
We could have a long discussion about that one quote by itself, but thank you for reading it. For Rumi, This worldly love can, through the guidance of a possessor of the heart, such as himself, lead lovers to the love of God. Okay, Durham, would you read number 12, please?
Sure.
Ooh.
Love for a human beloved, Layla, is a bridge toward love of God. Majnun, the exemplary crazy lover, is often a symbol in Persian literature for the self-abandonment that overcomes the mystic. Majnun's love for Layla also symbolizes the perception of spiritual realities seen only by the mystics. As in Mathnawi, as in Maulana's line, the Caliph said to Layla, "You are the one who's left Majnun bewildered and undone, but you don't seem remarkable to me." She said, "You need Majnun's eyes to see."
Aha. There's a clear instance of inner vision. Okay, thank you. So many Islamic poets before and after Rumi had composed verses about the two star-crossed lovers. Foremost among these was the 3,600 verse tale written by the Persian poet Nizami in 1188. Nizami died in 1202, 5 years before Rumi was born. Another important partial version can be found in Attar's Conference of the Birds. Attar died in 1221 when Rumi was 14. When you start looking at the dates, this is an incredibly rich time. I don't know how it was that there was so much creativity in that period, in that area, all at the same time. So a story of Rumi and Attar's meeting in Nishapur in 1216 was dismissed by Franklin Lewis as fictional. So the following is a passage from the Conference of the Birds relating to Layla and Majnun. Okay, so here we are ready to hear from Milton now.
A dear one saw Majnun sorrow-stricken. In the middle of the highway he was sifting dust. He said, "Ay, Majnun, in what manner, such as this, are you looking for?" Majnun answered, "I am looking for Layla, of course." The other responded, "How will you find Layla in the dust? How might a pearl of the first water be in the highway's dust?" He replied, "I am looking for her any place that there is. It might be that somewhere, sometime, I find her." Fariduddin Attar, Conference of the Birds.
Okay. Doesn't that remind you of the Valley of Search?
That's right.
Yeah. So now that's part one of Rumi's story. Let's look now at Baha'u'llah's version. What did he do with it? This is included, this story of Majnun's search in the dust is in the Valley of Search. All righty, who are we going to have read now? Aha, I see Sherry is ready this time. Yay.
One must judge of search by the standard of the Majnun of love. It is related that one day they came upon Majnun sifting the dust, his tears flowing down. They asked, "What doest thou?" He said, "I seek for Layli." "Alas for thee," they cried, "Layli is of pure spirit, yet thou seekest her in the dust." He said, "I seek her everywhere, haply somewhere I shall find her. Yea, though to the wise it be shameful to seek the Lord of Lords in the dust, yet this betokeneth intense ardor in searching. Whoso seeketh out a thing and persisteth with zeal shall find it." Baha'u'llah, The Seven Valleys.
All right, thank you. So Baha'u'llah concludes his rendition of this story with an endorsement of the intensity of the lover's quest. Jennifer, that one is number 15.
The true seeker hunteth not but the object of his quest, and the sincere lover hath no desire save reunion with his beloved. Nor shall the seeker reach his goal unless he sacrifice all things. That is, whatever he has seen and heard and understood, all he must set at naught with no God is there, that he may enter into the realm of the Spirit, which is the city of but God. Labor is needed if we are to seek him. Ardor is needed if we are to drink the nectar of reunion with him. And if we taste of this cup, we shall cast away the world. Baha'u'llah, the call of the divine beloved.
Mm. Boy, it's so uplifting, isn't it? Wow. Anyway, okay. So there's one more direct reference to the tale of Layla and Majnun in the Four Valleys. And that, I think, is going to be Rob. Oh, did I scare you off?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
That's not a problem.
Tell us not the tale of Layla, nor speak of Mojan's woe. Thy love hath made the world forget the loves of long ago. When once thy name was on the tongue, it reached the lover's ears and set the speakers and the hearers dancing to and fro. Baha'u'llah, Four Valleys.
Okay, thank you. So in this case, these two couplets are taken from a ghazal of the Sufi leader and poet Musli ad-Din Sa'di, who died in 1291. It exalts the beauty of the beloved, the power of love, and the fearlessness of the lover. So in two parts, here is the full ghazal. So I need somebody to read 17 and then 18. David, okay. Let's start out with 17.
Okay, may the eye of God be upon thee, O wondrous assemblage, my friend Yar, light of the meetings, king of the tribes. Thou walkest in thy splendor, and no cypress was ever seen swaying like thee. Each quality, Sifat, has a sign and a wisdom, Marifat. Thy face is an evidence of the power of God. Tell us not the tale of Layli or of Majnun's woe. Thy love, Ishq, hath made the world forget the loves of long ago. When once thy name was on the tongue, the lovers, Ashikan, caught it, and it set the speakers and the hearers dancing to and fro. And that's Sadi Kuliyat in Julio Savi, Towards the Summit of Reality.
So David, why don't you just go ahead and continue that, which is in number
Sure.
18.
Glad to do that.
And
How
don't
shall
worry, sorry, you don't necessarily have to read the Arabic terms in the
okay,
brackets.
I'll
You
leave
can
it.
just
Maybe
go.
that detracts from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How shall a curtain part the lover and the loved one? Not Alexander's wall can separate them. Let all the town look at me and see my arms round the neck of the friend. Our time has come to an end and our lives to their conclusion. The yearning for thee was not appeased. The love for thee did not vanish. If thou drivest me away from thee, no one will be my patron. I know the way only through thee, and I have no other mediator. To whom did I not recount the anguish of thy love? I told to everyone, but the affair remains unsolved. Still, Sadi is neither prudent nor sober, love won over all sorts of sciences. And again, that's the same.
Mhm. Okay, thank you very much. That was great.
Sure.
Okay, so that was part one of the story. Now we're going to go back to Rumi for part two. So this is the part of the tale where he has a fearful encounter with a night patrol officer. And Hangame is going to start us off with number 19.
How the lover found his beloved. For 7 years, that youth searched ceaselessly, becoming ghost-like for his fantasy. God's shade was over this devotee's head. Seekers transformed to finders up ahead. The prophet said, when you knock on a door, someone will come out if you wait some more.
So
Like-
there's a big section here that I have not included. That's the digression about search. And then it continues on. So go ahead from there, Hangame.
Whoever knocks upon doors patiently one day gains entry and find intimacy. Fearing gaolers, he hid in fields at night. He found the one he loves there, shining bright, torch-like.
Mm-hmm. So the translator is British. This word that looks like gaolers is actually the British spelling of jailers. Just so in case you know, you never had heard that before. Anyway, so that's the idea. Thank you. Okay, Linda, you're going to read number 20 then.
Sorry. He then asked God, who made this happen? O God, have mercy on this poor night watchman. You made the means, though I knew not my fate. You took me up from hell to heaven's gate. You made the means for this act for this reason, so I won't think ill even of a tree's thorn. When legs break, God gives wings, which are worth more. Likewise, in pits, he opens up a door. God says, don't think about being on a tree or in the pit. Look at me, I'm the key. Dear reader, if you want to read some more, you'll find the rest by looking in book 4.
Teaser. Okay. Thank you. So now we switch to Elizabeth, who's going to continue on. And if you wouldn't mind reading this italicized section, just to give you the overall view of what's coming.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Conclusion of the story of that lover who fled the night watchman into an unfamiliar orchard, through sheer joy at finding his beloved there, prayed for blessings for the night watchman, saying, maybe that you hate something, but it is better for you. We were relating how that person fled from the night watchman, then found instead, inside the orchard, she who'd won his heart, whom he pined much during years apart. Her shadow wasn't seen. He'd only heard about her, like a legendary bird. Apart from once when it occurred by fate, and seeing her made his heart palpitate. After that, though he tried relentlessly, that harsh one gave no opportunity. Neither his wealth nor begging could succeed. She was indifferent and lacked any need.
Yeah, I guess my typo kind of threw you off here. It's her shadow wasn't seen. Yeah, you figured that out pretty quickly, but sorry, I make an occasional mistake just to keep people on their toes.
No problem. No problem.
So the legendary bird that Rumi mentions is an anka, A-N-Q-A. This Arabic word denotes a phoenix, griffin, eagle, thunderbird, or sphinx. It symbolizes the purest spirit of all spirits. The anka is described by Ibn Arabi as the dust cloud within which God opens up the forms of the universe. Okay, so now let's see what number 22 has to say. This is the 23 is going to be the end of the story in Rumi. So, okay, Linda, you got your hand up again. Is that intentional?
Sorry, no, I should take it down.
Oh, okay.
My apologies.
Anybody else? Somebody we haven't heard from yet? Well, Rob, I'll accept yours.
Okay.
On lovers' lips, God smeared well at the start, a taste of their desired aim or sought art. When they begin to hunt their goal each day, he sets new snares for them along the way. That youth stepped in the orchard happily and came upon his treasure suddenly. Thus the night watchman was a means God made to drive him to the orchard unafraid. He saw his sweetheart with a bright lamp look in search of a lost ring beside a brook. Savoring the moment, he then started praying to God and prayed for the night watchman, saying,
Oh, you might as well continue on. Just go through
I caused
23.
him loss by my flight and departure, so scatter upon him much more gold and silver. Relieve him of his toil, and let him be as happy as I am now. She's near me. In this world and the next, bless him with peace, and from his toil, please give this man release. O God, although it is the watchman's nature to always wish for people harm and bother, he prayed for that night watchman. It was due to him that comfort came within his view. He was the cure, though poison to another, because that man had joined him with his lover.
Okay, thank you. Whew. Okay, so now that's the original version. Now what we want to do is read Baha'u'llah's masterful reworking of the story of the lover and the night watchman. Once again, please notice the changes, omissions, or additions Baha'u'llah introduces. And Durham is going to read number 24 for us.
There was once a lover, it is said, who had sighed for long years in separation from his beloved and wasted in the fire of remoteness. From the rule of love, his breast was void of patience and his body weary of his spirit. He reckoned life without her as a mockery, and the world consumed him away. How many a day he found no respite from his longing. How many a night the pain of her kept him from sleep. His body was worn to a sigh, and his heart's wound had turned into a cry of sorrow. 1,000 lives would he freely have given for one taste of the cup of her presence. And yet, even this was not within his reach. The doctors knew no cure for him, and companions avoided his company. Yea, physicians have no remedy for one sick of love, unless the favor of the beloved deliver him. Baha'u'llah.
Okay, thank you. And Marie is going to continue the story in number 25.
At last the tree of his longing yielded the fruit of despair, and the fire of his hope fell to ashes. Then one night he could bear life no more, and he left his house for the marketplace. On a sudden, a watchman followed after him. He broke into a run, with the watchman in swift pursuit. Then other watchmen came together and barred every passage to the weary one. And that wretched one cried from his heart and ran here and there and moaned to himself, "Surely this watchman is Israel, my angel of death, following so fast upon me, or he is a tyrant of men, prompted by hatred and malice." His feet carried him on, that hapless one, bleeding with the arrow of love, while his heart lamented. Then he came to a garden wall, and with untold pain and trouble he scaled it. He saw that it was very high, yet, forgetting his life, he threw himself down into the garden.
Oh, thank you. Such a great story. Okay, now number 26. I need a couple more, 3 more readers, 3 or 4 altogether, and then we're finished. Any takers?
Okay, Mark.
Oh, Jack. Okay, sir. Number 26.
And there he beheld his beloved with a lamp in her hand, searching for a ring she had lost. When the heart-surrendered lover looked upon his ravishing love, he drew a great breath and lifted his hands in prayer, crying, O God, bestow honor upon the watchman and riches and long life. For the watchman was Gabriel, guiding this poor one, for he was Israfil, bringing life to this wretched one. Indeed, his words were true, for he had found many a secret justice in the seeming tyranny of the watchman, and had seen how many a mercy lay hid behind a veil. In one stroke of wrath, the guard had joined one who was athirst in the desert of love to the sea of the beloved, and dispelled the darkness of separation with the shining light of reunion. He had led one who was afar to the garden of nearness, and guided an ailing soul to the heart's physician. You want me to do 27 too? Finish it?
Well, I have Alan waiting in the wings here. I'd rather.
Oh, Alan's waiting in the wings. Okay.
I'm going to ask you to read the next one after that. Okay, Alan, let's take it away.
Now, if the lover could have seen the end, he would from the beginning have blessed the watchman, prayed God on his behalf, and seen his tyranny as justice. But since the end was veiled to him, he lamented and made his plaint in the beginning. Yet those who journey in the garden land of true knowledge, since they see the end in the beginning, behold peace in war and reconciliation in enmity. Such is the state of the wayfarers in this valley. But the people of the valleys above this see the end and the beginning as one. Nay, they see neither beginning nor end, and witness neither first nor last. Nay, rather, the denizens of the city of immortality who dwell in the celestial garden see not even neither first nor last. They fly from all that is first and repulse all that is last. For these have passed over the worlds of names, and swift as lightning fled beyond the worlds of attributes. Thus it is said, the perfection of belief in divine unity is to deny him any attributes, and they have made their dwelling place in the shadow of the divine essence. Baha'u'llah.
Does anybody need any oxygen? Gee. Yeah, it doesn't get much higher than that. So our own distinguished scholar, Jack McLean, presented a superb paper on the story of Layla and Majnun at the 2001 Irfan Colloquium at the London School of Economics. He called it The Mystic's Flight, the Parable of Majnun and Layli. And I have sent that out to everybody on Sunday. Now, it wasn't necessary for you to read it, but we are going to touch on a few of the points that Jack raised. So in this article, Jack makes it clear that we are reading the product of a gradually refined, three-layered version of the Layla and Majnun story. He provides us with an outline of Nizami's poetical version, then Rumi's ethical version, and finally Baha'u'llah's theological version. And because we have him here tonight, I would very much like Jack to read number 28.
28, numéro 28. Okay. Baha'u'llah's scripture, while retaining some of the basic features of Nizami's and Rumi's version, is largely divested of the melos of Nizami and is more pointedly didactic and goes beyond the ethical context of the Mathnavi to locate the parable more explicitly in the divine milieu. In short, Baha'u'llah's parable has captured the essence of the earlier, is that versions or version, Mark? I can't see it.
Oh, I beg pardon, versions.
Versions.
Sorry.
Something's obscuring.
Yeah, I'm trying to close this chat. What the heck is going on here?
I don't know.
Just a second here.
Just hit cancel.
Okay, just a second. Let me try that again. Oh, where did it go? Okay, I'll hit cancel, as in which key is that? Escape? No.
Well,
cancel appears on the poster.
Here, there we go. We'll just make it smaller.
Okay. Baha'u'llah's parable has captured the essence of the earlier versions, their drama, tragedy, and suffering, sense of alienation, sublimity of soul, and metaphysical illusions, but has pared down these versions to their essential and has distilled them into a self-contained spiritual allegory of the soul's desperate search for God, a search that ends in a theology of hope and the promise of salvation to the true seeker.
Okay, thank you. So in the course of this lengthy article, Jack highlights 5 valuable features of Baha'u'llah's version of this story. First, Baha'u'llah makes his own commentary or moral. The only other case of a manifestation of God offering a commentary on one of his own stories occurs in the New Testament. In Luke 8:4-21, Jesus interprets his own allegory, which is the only one of his 60 parables in which he does this. Then a second feature is the aesthetic value. In terms of its sheer eloquence, even in translation, dramatic power, and moral persuasion, this little story is one of the brightest gems in all of spiritual literature, says Jack. Then there's the rarity of the parable genre. Parables are relatively rare in the writings of Baha'u'llah that have been translated to this point. The brief story of the grammarian and his companion, which is also taken from Rumi, is the only other known Baha'i parable. The fourth is the prosaic element. Unlike the mystical philosophical language of the rest of the 7 valleys, Jack says this story is prosaic in that it is couched in the non-mystical language of the romance tale, and thus serves as a bridge between human and mystical experience. It also contains tragic comical elements, which the comedic element dominating in the sudden dramatic ending, which is an excellent example of both reversal and recognition, as outlined in the Poetics of Aristotle. And the last point you make, Jack, is that it's a modern story with existential elements. While it is a classic timeless love story, it is singularly modern in its existential elements. Jack compares Majnun with some of the religious personalities portrayed in Dostoevsky's novels. In Baha'u'llah's version of the story, he is neither a saint nor a hero. And then we have one last quotation from Jack, and then we're done. So, Jack, do you want to finish this off?
Yes, sir, I will do that. Thanks for reminding me, Mark. I wrote all this stuff.
I bet it seems foreign to you now.
Oh, I'd actually forgotten. Okay, here we go. Baha'u'llah's commentary would seem to indicate that Majnun, before the realization of his heart's desire, was a rather impatient, incontinent lover. He is, however, the prototype of the faithful, if not excessive lover, who in the end realizes his heart's desire. By sheer excess of zeal and sincerity of will, Majnun wins the goal. But viewed from another perspective, that of moderation and the golden mean, he could be viewed as manifesting a singular lack of detachment. Insert A there, a singular lack of detachment. Thus, while Majnun exhibits definite psychological excesses that are set in a Middle Eastern context, he is thoroughly contemporary and Western in his manifestation of angst, loneliness, depression, and the utter despair that leads him to temporary insanity and to contemplate self-destruction. You see, when he was heading for the marketplace, Baha'u'llah is implying, friends, that he was going to take his life. Remember, he says he could endure it no more, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the nadir, or low point of Majnun's vortex of despair, becomes a death wish. And we sense that something ominous is about to take place. But then the sudden reversal happens. And that's one of the things that Aristotle pointed out in his Poetics and great literature. There's the feature of the reversal where he scales the wall, falls down, and what does he see? He thought the night patrol was there to take his life. With great pain, he scales the wall, lets himself fall down on the other side, and guess what? He sees Layla searching for a lost ring with a lamp in her hand. So there's the dramatic reversal. So what I'm pointing out there is that this isn't just a Middle Eastern tale. It can apply to Western existential types of psychological types as well. So it covers both Eastern and Western culture. That's the end of my remarks, Mark.
Very good. Thank you so much, Jack. And thank you for writing that article that you almost forgot, except that you could remember that there was an A in there. Huh. Okay. Well, Durham, what are you going to be
Very
saying about this?
Canadian of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, the question is, why did he run? Why did he run from the watchman? He must have done something wrong somewhere. He was running. Otherwise, why did he run? He was looking for Layla.
What do you think?
But you see, this is the point. And there's a proverb in Arabic say, someone who has, well, it means if you have done something, you're always afraid of a watchman, So in this case, I ask myself, this man, he was searching for Layla.
But can I answer that, Mark, please?
Sure. Oh, go ahead.
But that's the point. That's the point. He doesn't deserve all the suffering that's heaped on him. You see, this poor guy experiences nothing but pain and a bleeding heart. He doesn't deserve all that he goes through. He's so frustrated. He can't find Layla anywhere. He's heartbroken. He's in despair. He's ready to take his life. And then on top of that, gets heaped on the night patrol who's coming to bug him, to chase him, to arrest him. So he's really, this poor man has gone through the worst of the worst. But the Baha'u'llah simplifies the story, and then he takes, and a very interesting, Mark, I point out in the paper that the story of Majnun and Layla, he doesn't put it in the valley of love. Guess what? He puts it in the valley of knowledge.
Yeah. Because
he wants us to learn something from this tale. And as Mark said, well, quoting me, Baha'u'llah interprets his own story, which he doesn't do very often. You don't find Baha'u'llah interpreting his own story very often in our sacred writings. So it's an amazing little tale. It really is. And it is, I believe, and if you could hear it in Persian, it's to die for. I mean, I don't speak Persian, but I appreciate enough of the language, the symphony of the Persian language. It's such a gorgeous language. But when you hear this, as the Persian-speaking friends will tell you, when you hear this in Persian, it's just gorgeous. It's to die for.
Okay. I see I've got 2 or 3 other hands up here, Jack, so I'm just going to
that's
move along into Elizabeth now. What do you want to say?
Well, Jack he's already said. Well, what I want to say is, because I've read the 7 valleys before, and this and I distinctly remember that this is not under the valley of search, but under the valley of knowledge, because what I got out of it is that the whole point of passing through the valley of knowledge is to be able to see the end of all things, to sort of see the outcome, so that because when that, as Baha'u'llah said, the valley of knowledge is the last plane of limitation before you get it into the valley of unity and contentment and so on. And I think that was, and I thought, well, that was the point of recounting this story under the valley of knowledge, so that you could because if this poor Majnun had seen the end of it, he would have saved himself an awful lot of trouble and an awful lot of distress. Anyway, that's the point I wanted to make.
Well, that's a good one. Thank you. Okay, so I think we've got David and Belinda on top here.
Okay, I just wanted to speak to Durham's question. What had he done wrong? Nothing at all. Policemen in our world are watchmen in the world of this story. And their job at night, the night watch, is to go about and make sure nobody's running around getting ready to commit burglaries or other crimes. And so the watchman sees him, and maybe he just starts out with, "Oh, hey, what are you doing, guy?" And Majnun runs. So what does a policeman do when somebody runs? They run after them. What does my dog do when the squirrel runs? He runs after him. That's what they're programmed to do. So, I mean, Majnun didn't need to do anything wrong. He just needed to react with fear or distress when the night watch sees him. He doesn't want to be found. He wants to be alone with his sorrow and grief and his distress. But nevertheless, the watchman becomes his enemy, and and chases him up this street and down that street, and then finally down the alley where the wall is, and over he goes, and down he falls. And it's a wonderful story. I've told it to people from time to time, and they get it in whatever context they need to get it.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
Thanks.
Durham, you're going to respond to that probably, right?
No, I just want to say that, you see, when he is falling in love, sometimes he feels guilty that why he's going crazy about this. Why should I be taking time and relax, until I find this? And maybe that was hitting his head, that I think I'm doing something wrong. I shouldn't continue in this looking for Layla and so on. But anyway, thank you very much.
Good point. Okay, now I've got Bill and Sherry online here. What?
Hi,
Which?
it's
Sherry this time. Okay.
So I think the message I get out of it is that in general, we as humans, we're kind of unable to distinguish the good from the bad, and overall what's happening, and we misinterpret. So for example, like when we die, we think, oh, that's going to be a really bad thing, but we're going to actually enter into another kingdom. And we don't have the knowledge of perceiving, what the outcomes are of various things.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me a little bit of the story with Kadir and Moses, where every time something happened, Moses would question really like the will of God,
Yeah.
will, and think that, oh, this is really terrible, these events that are happening. But God had the greater knowledge, of course, Kadir, and, could say, well, no, this isn't, bad, because what would have happened would be much worse. And, we always kind of put our own egos and think that we really know things, but I think we can't very well discern what the outcomes are. And if I look around today and think about, okay, there's all these disintegrating forces happening in the world, and it's much harder to see the integrating forces that are going up. It's like there's crisis and then there's victory. So there's this, feeling of loss and despair, and how everything bad is happening, but it turns out that everything is really according to God's will, and love wins out, I guess.
I think you're quite right to take the moral of the story and start to apply it to our current lives. And we need to realize this is a limitation of being human, that we do not get to see the end as we currently are structured. That maybe that can change if we were to evolve in the direction that I'm going to be talking about in some of the future classes. Yeah. And one of the ways is by opening your inner eyes, seeing things from a God's eye point of view, seeing the really big picture.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay, Jack, you have another
Well,
thought?
Sherry has said it so well, and you have added on to that, Mark. I think that we're coming to the nub of the whole thing now. You see, Majnun is all of us. Majnun is our soul. And his journey represents the tests and difficulties, the failures, the trials, the troubles that we all have in life, that we all experience in life. And as you said, Mark, it's a limitation of our humanity that when we're going through a difficult time in our personal lives, whatever it may be, it becomes very difficult to see the end in the beginning. And Baha'u'llah says it's often only after something happens that we begin to understand the wisdom of it. So take it as a parable of our whole life's journey, that no, we won't get our souls fulfilled here on earth, but we will in the Abha kingdom. So it's a story about the journey of the soul, and I think we can apply it to the journey of the soul in this life and in the end, because it is in the end. I mean, Aquinas said it's what happens in the end that really matters. Not what's going on during. It's what happens at the end. And at the end, there's joy, there's happiness, there's the fulfillment of the heart's desire. So that's the comedic element, not comedy as in ha-ha, but comedic in the theatrical sense of a happy ending. And I think this is what Baha'u'llah is telling us in this tale. It's a tale of hope. He's saying, don't despair, because you will find what you're looking for in the end if you will just persevere. And the things that seem so cruel and difficult to endure, whatever they may be, will ultimately prove to be God's blessing. But takes a lot of steadfastness, wisdom, and faith to really believe that. I haven't been able to see the end in the beginning yet. I mean, I believe it's there. I trust it's there because I have faith that I'll get through my trials and tribulations eventually. But yeah, so it's a wonderful tale, and it's just full of many wonderful things.
Okay, I see that David Erickson has his hand up, or is it Belinda?
No, it's me.
Ah, okay.
This time. Yeah. I just wanted to say two things, and this may sound odd. When I have read that story many times, and although I've thought about it, I found that I was just taking it at face value. Because the story is its own explanation. The story tells you, not only with what's going on, but with what will be or should be or whatever. The other thing is that there's an American composer. He was an insurance salesman, and I can't get his name out. And this was more towards the early part of the 20th century. He wrote a composition called The Unanswered Question. Maybe you know of it. Maybe you know of it. Well, it's not long, but it's very, very interesting because he has a line of melody, so to speak, and it's constant going through the whole composition while human beings, are going every which way. You know, they're going here, they're going there, and they're crossing the main melody and so on, but not getting it. You know, so I just thought that would be interesting to mention because it's really a musical metaphor.
You're thinking of Charles Ives, David.
What do you say?
Charles who?
Charles Ives. Yeah, Charles Ives. That's it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
We just couldn't. Neither of us could get the
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
We
It's
figured
in-
it would turn up in
it's-
one of us by midnight.
It's interesting that Leonard Bernstein developed a course that he called the unanswered question that he delivered. I can't remember if it was Harvard or somewhere else, but it actually is available. So it's probably
Yeah.
a deep explanation of what you were just talking about. I did hear it when
Yeah.
I was young. My father possessed it, but I can't remember the content of it at all. Interesting point, though, about it being a
Okay.
musical metaphor. Yeah, that's helpful.
Right.
Okay, Rob, what's up?
I really appreciate and am grateful that I was able to read this wonderful article by Jack McCants, and it's very illuminating. I'm struck by the idea that we are struggling, and very apropos, of course, this time that we're living in, to be able to take a higher, a more faithful attitude towards events. But I'm thinking about this element of those who see the end in the beginning, but then it goes beyond and says those who don't see any end or any beginning and deny the attributes of God. It speaks to me that these things somehow may be attainable to us in this life. Or else, why would Baha'u'llah be revealing it if we weren't capable of reaching these glorious heights? So
yeah, absolutely. You're referring to the 5 layers in the Baha'i writings, right? The Nasut, Malakut, Jabarut, Lahut, and Hahut. So when Baha'u'llah is talking about seeing the divine essence without any names and attributes, he's talking about you're being able to appreciate the difference between Lahut and Hahut. Hahut is the divine essence. Lahut is the God that enters into relationships, which has all the names and attributes. So that's I hadn't thought of it that way before, but that's an interesting point. Any comeback on that?
Hi, Mark. I'd like to say something else. As an example of seeing the end in the beginning, the Baha'i faith is not devoid of such examples. Other than the 20,000 martyrs of the faith, in the recent years, we have had almost 300 believers. Had they not seen the end in the beginning, they would have not consented, or they would have recanted their faith and not joyously ran to the field of martyrdom. The same thing with hundreds of believers who are still in prisons in Iran, unknown faith. Those are examples of people who see the end in the beginning and yet submit to their faith.
Wow. Yes, you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Shidan. I think the martyr is an excellent example of someone who can do that.
Okay, Sherry and Bill. Is it Bill this time?
Yeah.
I can never tell.
I'm Bill. This is Sherry.
Mhm.
So, this ability to see the end and the beginning is, in my mind, not necessary. That what's important is to know that you can't see the end and the beginning, and so that you can't assume the outcome, a particular outcome. You certainly, when you have despair, you're assuming that outcome. So it's the assumption of a dark or a light, or anything's possible future that you have. And this is kind of entering into the realm of, what hope is. And, people who are going forward with some faith, which I think is metaphorical to love in this circumstance. That means they're taking action on that love is driving them forward or causing them to take action. And if they are themselves removing themselves as an agent in those things which they are despaired about, and just sitting in a corner somewhere saying, well, that didn't work out, I think I'll be miserable and starve myself to death over love, which people used to do. They would get what they called lovesick, and and wither away. But if you only know that because you don't know the end at the beginning or anywhere along the way towards that end, if you're aware that the fact that you don't know that doesn't mean that what you're seeking or what you want, or the outcome that you would like to have isn't available. It just means you don't know for sure that it is. And that's where faith comes into question. And the action that you take by pursuing the outcome that you want is where hope not only grows, but eventually comes into fruition with that result that has both faith and hope behind it as you move yourself through action toward light. That's an example of like taking how you already see something and fitting it into the narrative that we're discussing, but that's kind of the way I look at that.
Well, Baha'u'llah certainly praises Majnun for the wholeheartedness that he plunges into his search. And that seems to be a similar point to what you're saying here, that, given the blindness that we're operating with in terms of the end, all we can do is really just persevere in a steadfast way in ways that we hope will be positive.
Yeah, so I'm doing these courses in ABS, and a lot of people, I'm running across, I never met before. A lot of people are very fearful, almost paralyzed in fear and confusion, and as to what's going on around them, and the political and climatic and various other chaotic disarray elements that make up the environment that we see ourselves in.
Yeah.
And they're like, we want to hear something hopeful. We want to know, we want you to show us hope. And I think that when people begin to act upon the things that they want to be hopeful about, they spark that hopefulness. In other words, that hopefulness is within us. And if we have that faith and we have that love and we have that, and we take action on it. And I think that this is a good, this story to me, like I said, fitting it into my own paradigms, this story to me is a very good example of, and very relevant to what's going on today. Nobody knows what the outcomes are, but they can sure find ways to make it seem like there's nothing but darkness ahead.
Let's remember, Mark, if I could add to Bill's comment, which is very good. Majnun himself didn't see the end in the beginning. He didn't. He found what he was looking for, but he wasn't in that state that Baha'u'llah talks about.
No.
Now, Sherry talked about crisis and victory, and I think this is an important aspect of this whole thing, of seeing the end in the beginning And when I was a young man, I went down to visit Laura Davis, who'd made the pilgrimage during the days of Shoghi Effendi, because I wanted to hear about the Guardian and what he said. And one of the things Laura told me was she was in some ways the spiritual mother of Toronto, and she had a very ebullient, a bubbling love for Shoghi Effendi. And she used to smile and say, "Oh, Victor knows I love the Guardian more than I love him," that type of thing. And anyway, she said that the Guardian at one point during his remarks at the pilgrim table smiled and said to the pilgrims, "No crisis, no victory." So the crisis is, it's an inevitable part of the process. And as Bill was saying, it's very hard for people to do that in terms of our present political situation, isn't it? But we have to remember that the old world order needs tearing down before the new one can be built. So I think there's a lot of very rapid tearing down going on at the present time.
Well, on that positive note, why don't we wrap it up for another week and say goodnight to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Mark.
Mark.
It was
Thank
great
you,
to see you
Mark.
all.
Thank you,
Take
Linda.
care.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody. Good to see you all.
Thank
See
you,
you next
Linda.
time.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
See you in a
Thank
week.